The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with the sound of 1,000 different species communicating through clicks, whistles, and electronic translators. Ambassador Kethra of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's blue light as he gestured toward the holographic display floating above the assembly. "Honored delegates," Kethra's voice resonated through the translation matrix, "we gather today to address the newest species seeking membership in our glorious confederation, the humans of Terra, or as they call it, Earth." Ripples of amusement spread through the vast chamber. The insectoid hive mind representatives clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. The aquatic depths dwellers released streams of bubbles that translated as derisive chuckles. Even the stoic mechanical collective emitted what could only be described as digital snickering. "They claim," Kethra continued, his tone dripping with condescension, "to possess creatures of great power and terror on their world. They speak of beasts so fearsome that entire civilizations of their species have built mythologies around them." The holographic display shifted, showing images transmitted from Earth's databases. A magnificent lion appeared first, its golden mane flowing as it roared silently in the projection. Then came bears, massive and imposing, followed by sharks cutting through ocean waters with predatory grace. "Behold," announced Delegate Vexistar of the Crimson Nebula territories, his serpentine form coiling with mirth, "the apex predators of Terra. Observe how they strike fear into the hearts of humans with their formidable presence." The chamber erupted in what could generously be called polite applause, though most species were clearly struggling to contain their amusement. Admiral Zorith of the Stellar Navy, a being whose species had evolved from creatures that hunted in the void between stars, leaned forward in her gravitational field seat. "Tell me, Ambassador Kethra," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber like ice cracking, "what exactly makes these Earth beasts so remarkable? My own homeworld contains creatures that devour solar radiation and hunt in temperatures that would freeze these Earth creatures solid in mere seconds." The display cycled through more images. Elephants trumpeting, their massive forms impressive by Earth standards. Crocodiles lurking in murky waters, great white sharks, tigers, and wolves. Each image was met with increasingly obvious signs of dismissive amusement from the assembled delegates. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's sole representative in the chamber, sat in the designated observer section, her jaw clenched as she listened to the translation feed through her neural implant. She had expected skepticism, perhaps even some condescension, but the level of mockery was beyond what she had prepared for. "The humans," continued Delegate Quindar of the Void Stalkers, a species that had evolved in the crushing depths of gas-giant atmospheres, "speak of their great cats, as if they were gods of destruction. We have seen the data. These lions weigh perhaps 2 or 3 times what a human weighs. On my homeworld, our hatchlings consume prey 10 times their own mass before their first molting." More laughter rippled through the assembly. The Biomechanical Synthesis Collective displayed scrolling text across their facial screens that roughly translated to various expressions of incredulous disbelief. Kethra gestured again, and new images appeared. "They claim these wolves hunt in coordinated packs, as if tactical cooperation in hunting were some unique evolutionary development. The hive mind has been utilizing coordinated hunting strategies for over 2 million standard years." The insectoid representatives clicked approval, their compound eyes gleaming with reflected light. "And observe," added Commander Brixtal of the Iron Dominion, his mechanically enhanced voice cutting through the ambient noise. "They speak with reverence of creatures called bears, massive omnivores capable of great strength. The weakest juvenile warrior of my people could tear these bears apart with minimal effort." Dr. Chen found her hands forming fists as she watched her world's magnificent predators being reduced to cosmic jokes. The translation system was working perfectly, ensuring she understood every slight, every dismissive comment. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Nixara of the Shadow Realm Collective, her form shifting between dimensions as she spoke. The humans' reverence for these simple biological machines stems from their own primitive evolutionary development. They still require protection from creatures that pose no real threat to any spacefaring civilization. The chamber's amusement was reaching new heights. Several delegates were now displaying their own homeworld predators on personal holographic devices, comparing them to Earth's fauna with increasingly dramatic presentations of superiority. Admiral Zorith's display showed creatures that looked like living nightmares, beings of pure energy that consumed entire ecosystems for breakfast. "These are our pet companions," she announced with casual pride. "Our children ride them to educational facilities." The depth dwellers contributed images of leviathans that dwarfed Earth's blue whales, creatures with crystalline teeth that could tear through starship hulls. "These are considered herbivores on our world," their speaker gurgled through the translation system. Dr. Chen watched as Earth's grizzly bears were compared to creatures that stood 50 feet tall and breathed plasma. She listened as Earth's great white sharks were mocked in comparison to space-borne predators that hunted between star systems. "I particularly enjoy," said Delegate Morgeth of the Eternal Flame Dynasties, his form crackling with controlled stellar energy, "their reverence for creatures called dragons in their mythology, fictional beasts that breathe fire and possess intelligence. On my homeworld, such creatures are used for basic transportation." The mockery was reaching a crescendo when Kethra called for order. While we all appreciate the amusing nature of human boasts about their world's fauna, we must address the practical matter at hand. The humans seek membership in our confederation. They offer their limited technology, their basic military capability, and their unique perspective on predator worship. "What military capability?" laughed General Vorthok of the War Clans, his scarred hide reflecting battles against creatures that existed in higher dimensions. "They speak of weapons that fire small metal projectiles. Their most powerful explosives could barely scratch the surface of any respectable war beast from the outer spiral." The laughter was becoming uncomfortable now, echoing through the chamber in ways that made even some of the more diplomatic delegates shift uneasily. Dr. Chen noticed a few of the older, more experienced representatives watching the proceedings with expressions that seemed less amused and more concerned. Elder Tharis of the Ancient Concordat, a being whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations, finally spoke. His voice, when it came through the translation matrix, carried weight that seemed to quiet some of the more boisterous delegates. "Young ones," he said, his ancient form barely visible in the shadows of his seating area. "Remember that every species in this confederation was once considered primitive by those who came before. The humans may amuse you now, but they have achieved faster-than-light travel and contact with galactic civilization. This is not accomplished by species without hidden strengths." But his words were drowned out as Delegate Kethra resumed his presentation. "The humans claim that their predators have shaped their cultures, their religions, their very understanding of power and survival. They suggest that facing these Earth beasts has prepared them for the challenges of galactic citizenship." The chamber erupted again. The idea that facing down a terrestrial lion or bear could prepare anyone for the realities of galactic conflict was apparently the height of cosmic comedy to most assembled delegates. "I propose," announced Admiral Zorith, her voice cutting through the laughter like a blade, "that we demonstrate to our human friends exactly what real predators look like. Perhaps an educational exchange program. We could show them creatures that would make their legendary beasts seem like the primitive biological curiosities they truly are. The suggestion was met with enthusiastic approval from nearly every delegation. Dr. Chen watched in growing alarm as the proposal gained momentum. These beings were talking about bringing creatures to Earth that defied every natural law her species understood. An excellent suggestion, Kethra agreed. We shall arrange demonstrations. The humans will witness true apex predators, beings that have evolved under the harsh conditions of hundreds of different worlds. Perhaps then they will understand their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. As the session moved toward its conclusion, Dr. Chen activated her personal communication device. The message she sent was brief, encoded in protocols that only the highest levels of Earth's government would understand. Council mockery exceeded all projections. They planned to bring their predators to Earth for demonstration purposes. Recommend immediate activation of all contingency protocols. We may need to show them what we've really been hiding. The reply came back almost instantly. Just 2 words that made her blood run cold even as they filled her with grim satisfaction. Baba Yaga? Dr. Chen looked out across the still-laughing assembly of cosmic powers and typed her response. Baba Yaga. As the Galactic Council session officially concluded amid continued laughter and dismissive commentary about Earth's amusing fauna, none of the assembled delegates noticed the subtle change in Dr. Chen's expression. The fear and embarrassment that had marked her features throughout the session was gone, replaced by something that resembled anticipation. The galaxy had made its position clear. Earth's beasts were jokes, cosmic curiosities that proved humanity's primitive nature. They wanted to demonstrate real predators, show the upstart humans what actual terror looked like. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. In the depths of Earth's most classified facilities, servers hummed to life as ancient protocols were activated. Deep in the forests of Russia, in the mountains of Scotland, in the underground complexes that officially didn't exist, things that had slumbered for decades began to stir. The galaxy wanted to see real predators. They were about to get their wish. 3 months after the humiliation at the Galactic Council, the first wave of alien delegates arrived at Earth's orbital station with their demonstration creatures. The station's viewing decks were packed with human officials, scientists, and military personnel, all forced to witness what the galaxy considered real predators. Admiral Zorith had brought something she called a void stalker, a creature that looked like it had crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. 20 feet long, covered in chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light itself, with 6 legs ending in claws that could cut through battleship hull plating. Its head was an elongated nightmare of sensory organs and mandibles that dripped acid. This, Admiral Zorith announced proudly through the translation system, is barely past juvenile stage. On my homeworld, creatures like this are used to teach our children about the food chain. They hunt by detecting heat signatures from distances of several thousand kilometers and can survive in hard vacuum for months. The human observers watched in carefully controlled silence as the creature was paraded around in its containment field. Dr. Chen stood among them, her face a mask of professional interest, even as several nearby officials looked distinctly uncomfortable. General Vorthak had contributed what he called a flame wraith, a being of living fire and shadow that existed partially in another dimension. It stood 12 feet tall and moved like controlled lightning, its form constantly shifting between solid matter and pure energy. The heat radiating from its containment field was enough to make the air shimmer. These hunt in packs of 1,000, General Vorthak explained, his scarred hide gleaming under the station's lights. They can pass through solid matter at will, and their touch can melt through any known material. We use them to clear asteroid fields when we need quick mining access. Delegate after delegate presented their homeworld champions. The Depth Dwellers brought a creature that existed primarily as a gravitational anomaly with teeth, something that could create localized space-time distortions to capture prey. The biomechanical collective had engineered something that was part machine, part evolved nightmare, capable of adapting to any threat in real time. Each demonstration was accompanied by barely concealed smugness and pointed comments about how these real predators made Earth's fauna look like children's toys. The assembled humans were expected to be properly awed and humbled. "Tell me, Dr. Chen," called out Delegate Kethra as the demonstrations concluded, "what do you think of these examples of true evolutionary adaptation? Do they help you understand why your Earth beasts generated such amusement among civilized species?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. "They are indeed impressive examples of their respective evolutionary pressures. I can see why your species hold them in such regard." "Impressive?" laughed Admiral Zorith. "My dear human, these are common creatures from our worlds. Wait until you see what we've prepared for the surface demonstration." The surface demonstration. Dr. Chen had been dreading and anticipating this moment in equal measure. The galactic delegates had requested permission to bring their creatures down to Earth itself, to show humanity's predators being hunted and killed by real apex predators in their own habitats. "We've selected your African savanna for the first demonstration," General Vorthak announced. "We'll release one of my younger flame wraiths to hunt some of your celebrated lions. Your people can observe how a real predator deals with such primitive prey." The human delegation had agreed to this spectacle, though every official present had received the same classified briefing. They knew what was really about to happen, even if they couldn't show it. 2 days later, the demonstration area was established in a remote section of the Kenyan savanna. Massive force field generators had been installed to contain the alien predators, with observation platforms positioned at what the galactic delegates considered a safe distance. The alien representatives were in high spirits, their various forms of communication creating a carnival atmosphere as they prepared to prove their point definitively. Hundreds of galactic media drones buzzed overhead, ready to broadcast humanity's humiliation across the civilized galaxy. Dr. Satwar Chen stood with Director Harrison from Earth's Department of Xenobiological Affairs, both of them wearing expressions of professional resignation. To any observer, they looked like officials forced to witness the destruction of their world's pride. "Begin with something simple," suggested Delegate Kethra. "Perhaps release one of your lions into the containment area. We'll start with my crystalline hunter, a creature from the high radiation zones of my homeworld." The crystalline hunter was terrifying to behold. A translucent predator that seemed to be made of living diamond and lightning. It stood 8 feet at the shoulder, moved with fluid grace despite its apparent crystalline structure, and generated an energy field that made the air around it crackle with power. A magnificent male lion was released into the containment area, its golden mane flowing as it padded across the grassland. The alien delegates leaned forward in anticipation, their recording devices humming with activity. The lion looked around calmly, seemed to locate the crystalline hunter, and began walking directly toward it. "Fascinating," commented Admiral Zorith. "The primitive creature doesn't even recognize the threat. Its evolutionary programming is so limited that it can't process genuine danger." The crystalline hunter began its approach, energy crackling around its form as it prepared to demonstrate the vast gulf between Earth's primitive predators and true galactic apex hunters. That's when Dr. Chen activated her communicator. The signal went out on a frequency that had been waiting for this moment for months. Deep in the Siberian wilderness, in facilities that existed in no official records, dormant systems that had been sleeping for decades suddenly came online. The sky above the demonstration area began to change. It started as a subtle darkening, as if clouds were gathering, but there were no clouds. The air itself seemed to thicken and grow cold, despite the blazing African sun. A wind began to blow from no discernible direction, carrying with it the scent of deep forests and older things. The galactic delegates looked up with mild curiosity, their attention temporarily diverted from the impending slaughter in the containment area. "Some local weather phenomenon?" asked General Vorthak, though his scarred hide was beginning to show signs of unease. The crystalline hunter had reached the lion and was raising itself to strike when the first shadow passed overhead. It was massive, easily the size of a small starship, but it moved with organic fluidity that no machine could match. "What was that?" Admiral Zorith demanded, her gravitational sensors suddenly spiking with readings that made no sense. Dr. Chen checked her communicator and spoke in a voice that had lost all pretense of nervousness. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the real reason Earth's predators have earned our respect throughout history?" The shadow passed overhead again, and this time the assembled delegates could see it clearly. It defied every law of aerodynamics, every understanding of biological possibility. A structure that seemed part building, part creature, supported by legs that looked like the trunks of impossible trees, moving through the sky as if the air was solid ground beneath it. "Baba Yaga, Dr. Frost," Chen announced calmly. "Also known as Project Grandmother. Earth's first and most successful attempt at creating something that could threaten galactic-level predators. The thing that descended from the sky was beyond classification. It had been built in the depths of the Cold War, when human paranoia and ingenuity had combined with recovered alien technology from crashes that the public never learned about. Part biotechnology, part applied mythology, part pure nightmare fuel distilled into functional form. Baba Yaga settled onto the savannah with a sound like thunder, its massive chicken-like legs creating small earthquakes as they touched down. The structure on its back was a writhing mass of organic architecture and advanced technology, towers and weapon systems that pulsed with their own life. Inside the containment area, the lion looked up at the arrival and did something that froze the blood of every alien delegate present. It smiled. Not the way humans smile, but with a predator's recognition of an apex hunter. The same instinctive acknowledgement that had allowed Earth's predators to coexist with humanity's growing technological might over the millennia. The crystalline hunter, faced with something it had no evolutionary context for, did what any sane predator would do when confronted with something completely outside its understanding. It ran. The energy field that surrounded the alien predator flickered and died as pure terror overrode its hunting instincts. The creature that had been preparing to casually slaughter an Earth lion was now fleeing in panic from something that violated every natural law it understood. Baba Yaga's multiple sensor arrays tracked the fleeing alien predator with casual interest. Weapon systems that combined human military engineering with recovered extraterrestrial technology locked onto the target. The sound that emerged from Baba Yaga's speakers was not quite mechanical and not quite biological, but it was definitely hungry. "Impossible," whispered Delegate Kethra, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. "What is that thing? Our sensors can't get consistent readings." "That," Dr. Chen replied with growing satisfaction, "is what happens when a species that has spent millennia learning to fear the dark decides to become the thing that lives in it." Baba Yaga represents several decades of human military engineering combined with what you might call applied mythology. The massive construct began moving across the savannah, and its movement was wrong in ways that made the watching aliens feel physically sick. It didn't walk so much as exist in different places sequentially, as if space itself was rearranging to accommodate its passage. "Your crystalline hunter is impressive," Dr. Chen continued conversationally. "But it evolved on a world with rules. Baba Yaga was built by a species that decided rules were suggestions." Admiral Zorith was frantically consulting her tactical displays, trying to understand what her sensors were telling her. "This is impossible. The energy signatures don't make sense. How does it achieve flight with those limbs? How does it maintain structural integrity while moving at those speeds? The same way a nightmare maintains coherence while you're dreaming, Director Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of classified knowledge. We didn't try to build something that followed the laws of physics. We built something that made the laws of physics follow it. In the containment area, the crystalline hunter had given up all pretense of being a predator. It was pressed against the far wall of the force field, every line of its body language screaming terror. The lion, meanwhile, was calmly grooming itself, occasionally glancing up at Baba Yaga with what could only be described as professional respect. You see, Dr. Chen continued, Earth's predators didn't just shape our cultures and mythologies. They taught us what it meant to be afraid. And once we learned that lesson, we spent the rest of our development making sure we would never have to be afraid again. Baba Yaga had settled into what appeared to be a hunting crouch, despite being the size of a building. Its attention was focused on the alien predator with an intensity that made the surrounding air vibrate with potential energy. "This is madness," General Vorthak growled, though his scarred hide showed stress patterns that indicated he was reconsidering his entire understanding of primitive species. "No civilization develops weapons like this." "You're right," Dr. Chen agreed. "Civilizations don't, but species that grow up being hunted by their own planet's ecosystems, species that have to earn their place at the top of the food chain through intelligence and determination rather than natural gifts, those species develop very different approaches to the concept of apex predation." The demonstration area had become very quiet. The carnival atmosphere among the alien delegates had evaporated completely, replaced by a tension that none of them quite understood. Baba Yaga raised what might charitably be called its head, and released a sound that bypassed the ears entirely and spoke directly to the primitive fear centers of every brain present. It was the sound of hungry darkness given voice, the audio equivalent of being stalked by something that existed in the spaces between spaces. Every alien delegate present took an involuntary step backward. The lion in the containment area yawned and settled down for a nap. "So you see," Dr. Chen concluded, "when you asked to demonstrate the difference between your predators and ours, you were operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. You thought our respect for Earth's predators came from fear. It doesn't. It comes from gratitude. They taught us lessons that no other species in the galaxy has had to learn." Baba Yaga began to move again, and this time there was no question about its intentions. It was hunting the crystalline hunter with the casual efficiency of something that had been designed specifically for this purpose. "What lessons?" Admiral Zorith demanded, though her voice carried none of its earlier confidence. Dr. Chen's smile was entirely human, and somehow that made it more terrifying than anything Baba Yaga had done. "They taught us that there's always something bigger, faster, and hungrier than you are," she said quietly, "and that if you want to survive, you'd better learn to become the thing that even nightmares check their closets for." The Galactic Council's emergency session convened exactly 72 hours after the African demonstration. The great chamber that had been filled with laughter and mockery 3 months earlier was now thick with tension and barely contained panic. Admiral Zorith stood at the central podium, her gravitational field fluctuating with stress patterns that made nearby delegates uncomfortable. "The situation is unprecedented," she began, her voice carrying none of its former confidence. "In my 3 centuries of military service, I have never encountered anything that completely defied our understanding of tactical reality." The holographic display above the assembly showed footage from the demonstration that had been analyzed by every major galactic intelligence service. Frame by frame, the impossible became undeniable. Baba Yaga moving through space in ways that violated basic physics, energy signatures that made no sense according to any known science. Most disturbing of all, the complete psychological breakdown of creatures that had been apex predators on worlds that would crush most galactic species. The crystalline hunter, General Vorthak reported from his position, his scarred hide showing stress patterns that told their own story, required 3 days of intensive therapy before it could function again. Our xenopsychologists have never seen trauma responses of this magnitude in a predator species. Delegate Kethra's crystalline form flickered with uncertain light patterns. The technical analysis is equally disturbing. The construct the humans call Baba Yaga appears to operate on principles that our science cannot explain. It uses technology we don't recognize powered by energy sources we cannot identify. Dr. Chen sat in the same observer section she had occupied 3 months earlier, but her status had changed dramatically. No longer was she a representative of a primitive world seeking admission to galactic civilization. The emergency protocols enacted by the Council had granted Earth provisional membership with full diplomatic immunity, pending a complete reassessment of human technological capabilities. She was also no longer alone. Director Harrison sat beside her, along with General Martinez from Earth's Strategic Defense Command and Professor Zhang from the Department of Applied Mythology. The fact that Earth had a Department of Applied Mythology was causing its own ripples of concern among the more perceptive delegates. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Nixara of the Shadow Realm Collective, her form shifting nervously between dimensions, we should address the human delegates directly. We need to understand what we're dealing with. All attention turned to Dr. Chen as she rose to address the assembly. The same chamber that had laughed at Earth's lions and bears now listened with absolute silence as she approached the podium. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. "I believe there have been some fundamental misunderstandings about the nature of human technological development." She gestured, and her own holographic display activated, showing Earth from orbit. "You assumed that our reverence for our planet's predators indicated primitive development. You were partly correct. When we first encountered lions, bears, sharks, and wolves, we were indeed primitive. They were faster, stronger, and better equipped for survival than we were." The display zoomed in to show early human settlements, cave paintings, ancient hunting scenes. But you made an error in assuming that primitive meant static. Humans don't simply accept our place in the food chain. We study it, analyze it, and then find ways to climb higher. New images appeared, showing the development of human technology through the ages. Tools, weapons, agriculture, industry. But there was something different about this technological timeline, something that made several alien delegates lean forward with growing unease. "You see, most species develop technology to overcome environmental challenges," Dr. Chen continued. "We developed technology to overcome the things that hunted us. Every advancement in human civilization has been driven by the fundamental need to become better predators than the ones we feared." The timeline shifted to more recent developments: military technology, space exploration, genetic engineering. But woven throughout were symbols and references that made no immediate sense to the alien observers. Project Wendigo was our first successful attempt at applying folklore to military engineering, Dr. Chen explained as new images appeared. Developed during our Second World War, it created autonomous hunters that could track enemy forces across vast distances in any terrain. The project was shelved when the war ended, but the principles remained. General Martinez stood and joined Dr. Chen at the podium. Project Kraken came next during our Cold War period, deep ocean installations that could engage any submarine fleet in the world. The public believes our nuclear submarine deterrent kept the peace. They're not entirely wrong, but they don't know about the installations that made nuclear submarines obsolete before they were fully deployed. A new presence, made itself known as Professor Zhang, approached the display controls. The breakthrough came when we realized that human mythology wasn't just stories about the things we feared. It was a blueprint for the things we needed to become. The display changed again, showing a map of Earth marked with locations that didn't correspond to any known military installations. Deep in the Siberian wilderness, buried beneath the Scottish Highlands, hidden in the Amazon rainforest, scattered across the ocean floors. Each project drew inspiration from humanity's collective unconscious, Professor Zhang continued. The fears and survival instincts that shaped our species for millennia became the foundation for technologies that could make those fears reality for anyone who threatened us. Admiral Zorith's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. How many of these installations exist? Dr. Chen consulted a tablet that appeared to be accessing heavily encrypted data. Project Baba Yaga is one of 12 active installations in the Grandmother class. We have 27 additional projects in the Boogeyman classification, 43 in the Ancient Terror category, and several dozen smaller installations that fall under General Nightmare protocols. The chamber had become completely silent, except for the humming of translation systems struggling to process concepts that had no equivalent in most galactic languages. But surely, Delegate Kethra said, his crystalline form flickering with patterns that indicated deep confusion, this represents your entire military capability. No species can sustain such extensive defensive installations without crippling their civilian infrastructure. Director Harrison spoke for the first time since taking his position at the podium. That's where you're wrong. Delegate Kethra, these installations aren't our military. They're our insurance policy. New displays activated showing Earth's actual military capabilities. Fleets of starships that looked like they had been designed by creatures that lived in black holes. Weapons systems that seemed to fold space around them. Defensive networks that appeared to exist partially outside normal reality. Our actual military is what we built after we realized that scaring predators wasn't enough, General Martinez explained. We needed to be able to protect ourselves from anything the galaxy might send against us. The implications began sinking in among the assembled delegates. Whispered conversations broke out in a dozen different languages and communication methods. Elder Tharis of the ancient Concordat finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying through the translation system with weight that silenced all other conversation. Young humans, are you telling us that the demonstration we witnessed was not a display of your military might, but merely an expression of your psychological defense mechanisms? In simple terms, Dr. Chen replied, yes. Baba Yaga and the other grandmother installations exist to make things that hunt us afraid to hunt us. They're designed to project terror rather than deliver destruction. Our military exists to deliver destruction if terror proves insufficient. The massive chamber erupted in chaos as delegates began frantically consulting with their homeworld governments. Emergency communications filled the air as species that had been planning to demonstrate their superiority began reassessing their positions. Admiral Zorith called for order, but her own voice carried panic that was impossible to hide. Dr. Chen, we must ask directly, if these terror weapons are merely your defensive posture, what exactly is your offensive capability? Dr. Chen exchanged glances with her companions before responding. Admiral Zorith, I think you're asking the wrong question. You're assuming that we've built weapons to fight the galaxy. We haven't. Relief began to show in the body language of several delegates until Dr. Chen continued. We've built weapons to hunt the galaxy. The silence that followed was absolute. Not even the translation systems made a sound as every delegate present processed the implications of that statement. Professor Zhang stepped forward again. You see, Earth's predators taught us that successful hunters don't fight their prey. They study it, understand it, and then take it apart with surgical precision. We've been studying galactic civilization for quite some time. New displays activated showing intelligence gathering that made the assembled delegates physically recoil. Detailed analyses of every major galactic military installation. Complete psychological profiles of key political and military leaders. tactical assessments of every significant species' weaknesses and blind spots. We know exactly how each of your species thinks, how you fight, how you organize your societies, General Martinez added. We know your supply lines, your communication protocols, your emergency procedures. We know which of your allies would abandon you under pressure and which would fight to the last. This is impossible, General Vorthak growled, though his scarred hide showed stress patterns that indicated he was beginning to believe the impossible. No species could gather this level of intelligence without detection. You're thinking like a civilization, Dr. Chen replied. Civilizations gather intelligence through diplomacy, espionage, and technological surveillance. Predators gather intelligence by becoming part of the ecosystem they plan to hunt in. Director Harrison activated another display showing Earth's integration into galactic society over the past several years. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, military cooperation agreements. Every human diplomat, trader, scientist, and cultural attaché has been gathering data, he explained. Not through espionage, but through simple observation and interaction. We've learned how your societies function by participating in them. And now, Professor Zhang concluded, we understand exactly how to take them apart if necessary, not through massive military campaigns or dramatic confrontations, but through the precise application of pressure to the systems that hold your civilizations together. Elder Tharis spoke again, his ancient voice heavy with something that might have been recognition or respect. You have weaponized your understanding of fear and turned it into a survival strategy that encompasses entire galactic civilizations. We prefer to think of it as applied evolution, Dr. Chen replied. Earth's predators taught us that survival isn't about being the biggest or strongest. It's about being smart enough to become the thing that other things don't want to hunt. The emergency session continued for 17 hours as delegate after delegate tried to understand the full implications of humanity's revelation. By the end, the vote was unanimous. Earth's application for membership in the Galactic Confederation was not just approved, but fast-tracked to full membership with a permanent seat on the Security Council. The resolution passed without a single dissenting vote, though several delegates noted for the record that they were voting not out of friendship or respect, but out of the simple recognition that saying no to apex predators who had learned to hunt civilizations was probably not compatible with continued existence. In the final ceremony, as Dr. Am Chen accepted humanity's credentials as a full galactic power, she made one last statement that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The galaxy spent 3 months laughing at Earth's beasts and questioning whether creatures that inspired our respect deserved to be feared. I hope today's revelations have answered that question satisfactorily. She paused, looking out over the assembled delegates who now watched humanity with the same cautious respect that humans had once reserved for lions and bears. Our predators didn't just shape our culture and mythology. They taught us the most important lesson any species can learn, that there's always something hunting you, and survival means becoming better at hunting than anything that might hunt you. The ceremony concluded in silence. And as the delegates departed to carry news of humanity's true nature back to their homeworlds, one fact became abundantly clear throughout the galaxy. The age of mocking Earth's beasts was over. The age of fearing what they had created had begun.